Today we're going to look at conditional statements, which are statements that can be written in if-then form. This is a logical system that we are setting up. Like we said last time, all of math and science is based on observing patterns. And so based on those patterns, we can make our conditional statements. So let's go ahead and jump in. A conditional statement is a statement that can be written in if-then form. If thing A happens, then thing B happens. If it's not an if-then form, we can always rewrite it as if-then. So you might see some of these that aren't if-then statements, but they are conditionals, so they can be rewritten that way. So a couple examples of if-then statements. If you complete the packet yourself, then you are ready for the mastery check. If you drink coffee late at night, then you will have trouble sleeping. Now, like I said, some of these aren't written as if-then, so we need to do that, and we need to have some practice writing if-then statements. So none of these four are in if-then form, but they're all conditionals. So let's rewrite them in if-then form. When Susie stays up late, it's to catch Santa Claus. So basically, we want to figure out what thing causes the other. That's what we're going for here when we're trying to write these in if-then statements. And in this case, Susie stays up late so that she can catch Santa Claus. So if Susie stays up late, then it's to catch Santa Claus. And I'm just going to abbreviate SC, not to be confused with Scott Calvin, who of course really is Santa Claus. Moving right along, dolphins are mammals. This one's a little bit trickier because we have to add a whole bunch of words to this one. Okay, a dolphin is an example of what? What is the broadest thing you can describe a dolphin as? The most unspecific. It is an animal. So we want to say, if an animal is a dolphin, then what do we know about that animal? It is a mammal. Now, there's other things we know, but we're just dealing with the sentence right here. For C, very similar. Quadrilaterals have four sides. So when you're talking about a quadrilateral, what is the broadest thing you can describe a quadrilateral as? It is a shape. So if a shape is a quadrilateral, then it has four sides. And our last one, parallel lines never intersect. Now, how many lines do you have to make them parallel? Can you have a single parallel line? No, you can't. So in this case, we have to say if two lines are parallel, then what is true? They never intersect. Or you could say the lines never intersect. Now, conditionals can be broken down into two parts. This is what we're talking about, the cause and effect type of thing. The if part is called the hypothesis. Okay, this is the same word you used in your science classes, but it has a different meaning now. The then part is called the conclusion. And it is the same word you use in your English classes, but it has a different meaning now. So your hypothesis is the if part, your conclusion is the then part. Now this is very important. The if and the then are not parts of the hypothesis and conclusion. What comes after the if is the hypothesis. What comes after the then is the conclusion. And what these are used for is when the hypothesis is true, if we know the first part is true, it implies that the second part, the conclusion, will also be true. All right, so for example 5, we're going to just identify hypothesis and conclusion. If Marcus shoots the ball, then it will be an air ball. Now, what comes immediately after the word if? Marcus shoots the ball. So that's our hypothesis. What comes immediately after the then? It will be an air ball. So that's our conclusion. For 5b, if a triangle is equilateral, then it is also isosceles. So what comes after the if? A triangle is equilateral. So that's our hypothesis. What comes after the then? It is also isosceles. So that's our conclusion. Notice if and then in both of these are not underlined because they are not part of the hypothesis or the conclusion. The negation of a statement is its opposite. And you've been doing this for a long time. We often negate statements by adding the word not to it. Sometimes we have to add more than just the word not to make it make sense grammatically. But that's essentially what we're doing when we negate something. So if we wanted to say the ball is red, if we wanted to negate that, we'd say the ball is not red. If we wanted to say if our statement is the cat is not black, we wanted to negate that. The cat is not black. So we added not to it, but that's not how we really talk. Okay, so the two nots would cancel each other out. You learned this in English class, double negatives. So we would just say the cat is black would be our negation. Now, when we're dealing with our if-then statements, there are several related statements that we have. To demonstrate these statements, we'll use the conditional if I study really hard, then I earn an A on the test. And so we'll rearrange this and do our negations and stuff for each one of these to try to give you an example of each. So our first related statement is the converse of a statement. All right, and in this one we switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. So the conclusion then gets moved to the if part, and the hypothesis gets moved to the then part. So if I earn an A on the test, then I study really hard. Okay, we switch them. I'm going to go back up here just to make this a little easier for us. Okay, I study really hard is our hypothesis. I earn an A on the test is our conclusion. So I just switch them. I put the conclusion after if, I put the hypothesis after then. Our next one is called the inverse. And with the inverse, we negate both pieces. So we don't move them around, but we do negate both pieces. So if I don't study really hard, and this is one of those where you have to change things up a little bit. We wouldn't say if I not study. We can't just add the word not. So we need to say do not, and we just usually write that as don't. So if I don't study really hard, then I don't earn an A on the test. So we just negated both of these by throwing the word don't in there. Now the last one is the funnest word to say. It's the contrapositive. And it's when you switch them around like the converse, but then you negate both of them like the inverse. So you're doing both. So for this example would be, if I don't earn an A, on the test, then I don't study really hard. So we switched them and negated them. Now the contrapositive will always have the same truth value as the original statement. So if the original statement was true, the contrapositive will be true. If the original statement was false, the contrapositive will be false. The converse and inverse also will always be the same. So they'll always have the same truth value. Now, one other thing, if both the conditional and its converse are true, then it's what we call a biconditional statement. And we call them that because it can work either way. So it can be if hypothesis then conclusion, or if conclusion then hypothesis. Both are true, and so it could work either way. And these are usually definitions. All definitions could be rewritten as biconditional statements, and we use the phrase if and only if. Instead of just writing the word if, we write if and only if, and that's kind of our clue that it works either direction. Sometimes you will see that abbreviated as if with two F's. So one example of that, A shape is a triangle if and only if it has three sides. And the reason that works is because if it has three sides, then it's triangle. If it's triangle, then it has three sides. It works forwards and backwards. So that's all for our conditional statements. You need to be able to identify hypothesis and conclusion. You need to be able to rewrite statements in if-then form. And then we need to be able to write our contrapositive from our if-then statement, which is where we switch it and negate it. So make sure you do your Google form and get ready to do those practice problems together in class. Good luck.